In the beginning stages of life, we're connected to nutrients and resource through the umbilical cord. Most of us take our first breath through the mouth once it's cleared. In our early stages of development, we mostly breathe through the mouth and into the chest. With an open mouth breath, we have a larger intake valve with the throat. Once we start to get older, we start to breathe through our nose, having a smaller intake valve and being able to regulate breath a bit better. And we may continue to breathe mostly into the chest until we learn belly breathing. I learned belly breathing during panic attacks in high school. I couldn't get breath into my body. I had really shallow breaths into the chest, just causing me to hyperventilate and not get enough oxygen. So I was taught to belly breathe. Belly breathing makes it easier to take a deeper breath. There's no bones around the belly, so we can protrude the belly to try to suction more air down. I would consider this the intermediate breath, because eventually we want to get to breathing into the full container of the body. This is what we would call pelvic floor breathing. Let me first say, when we breathe, we're only taking air into the lungs. There's no air that fills up the belly or fills up inside the chamber of the chest. Unless you have a punctured lung, then there isn't any oxygen that's going to seep into the body. In the lower half of the body where the belly resides is sealed off from the lungs through our diaphragm. So there's no air moving, we're just displacing mass of the body and moving muscle. So let's take a look at the pelvic floor. This is a female specimen, but the inside of the pelvic bowl looks the same for males. This is our pelvic bowl, this network of muscles within the hip bones, the pelvic bone here. Now the pelvic bone is very similar to the shoulder girdle. It has this opening in the center, in the shoulder girdle where our head comes out, and the pelvic floor, it's where our urinary tract, our defecation system releases through the openings of the pelvic floor. So the muscles are kind of woven together, and there are openings within that allow things to move out, but it also holds our organs in the body. And you'll see at the back, it's located just under the tailbone. So it's right at the base of the spine. This is all very nerve-rich muscle coming right off of the spinal cord. So we want to keep these muscles loose and relaxed and allowing energy and vibration, blood and oxygen to move easily through this area. When we're pelvic floor breathing, we can expand and bring oxygen and circulation to the area. When we belly breathe, the muscles of the abdomen are actually pulling up on the pelvic floor in order to push the belly forward. I'll give a demonstration of what pelvic floor breathing versus belly breathing looks like in the body. So when I belly breathe, my belly comes forward on the inhale, and exhale, the belly comes to spine. In order to move my organs forward, I have to displace the muscle down here in and up to help move everything forward. Then exhale, belly to spine. Also notice when I bring my belly forward, it kind of brings a little arch to my back. It's harder to lengthen through my spine. So here's belly breath. And here's pelvic floor breathing. I can actually get a lot deeper breath when I'm inflating both chambers of the body, the upper chamber and the lower chamber. And that's because when the pelvic floor moves down, the organs can move down, and it actually kind of suctions the diaphragm downward. And as it suctions the diaphragm downward, I can expand farther into the chest and through the collarbone and shoulders. My lungs are in the top part of my chest, moving down to the bottom of my ribs. If I'm belly breathing and widening this part of the body, I'm actually only getting an expansion mostly through the bottom of the ribs. And what's happening when I expand through the center is that I'm having to squeeze or compress the tops and the bottom to get that center forward. So remember, I'm not pulling breath in. There's no air to inflate that belly. I'm displacing my organs forward rather than down. When I can move my organs down, I can lengthen through my spine much better. I'll try to use this balloon as a visual. So if I want to expand in the belly, move the belly forward, then I'm either going to have to compress the body or squeeze at the top and bottom to inflate the center. If I want to get more air into the upper part of this chamber and the base of this chamber, then I can constrict in the center and squeeze into the center so that I can inflate more like a hourglass instead of a balloon in the body. Also notice the difference in my chest when I belly breathe versus pelvic floor breathing. If I belly breathe, you see that I'm pulling down on my chest, and exhale, belly to spine. Inhale, belly comes down, kind of pulls my shoulders forward. If I pelvic floor breathe, you see my chest is more space to expand and lift. You even notice at the base of my body, moving down and out. Let's take one more look at belly breathing versus pelvic floor breathing, and notice the length of my breath, how deep of a breath I'm able to get in a belly breath versus pelvic floor breathing. Inhaling into the belly. Inhaling into the pelvic floor. So I feel very limited by the belly breath because I'm only able to expand and suction breath into the body as wide as I can pull that diaphragm around, rather than suctioning the diaphragm down and creating space for the breath to blossom into the chest and spread through the collarbone. We can compare pelvic floor breathing to the movements of a flower. In the inhale, the flower is blossoming upward, rooting down, roots are spreading into the earth. On exhale, it's retracting, pulling inward, compressing and releasing the breath. On the inhale, sprouting out, spreading across the chest and down through the base of the body. Exhale, lift, gathering and contracting inward to compress the breath out of the body. You can imagine the ribs like petals closing in, the intercostal muscles spreading to open into the light of the breath. Inhaling and expanding, exhaling, retracting and contracting. And if we're breathing backwards and lifting up on the pelvic floors, we inhale. It's like we're uprooting ourselves as we're trying to grow. So we're cutting off our resources to nutrients and fluidity. So what we want to do is expand in both directions, root down into the ground and blossom upward, suctioning and creating that channel to move the nutrients in between, gathering and lengthening through our suctioning stem in order to connect these two areas. Create that traction and extension through the spine. Exhale, closing down, compressing the air out of that main pump to cleanse and detoxify. When we apply the pelvic floor breathing, the bouquet of the breath can really spread through the chest and ground our body through the base. And on the exhale, lift and gather everything to compress the breath out of the body. Versus belly breathing, where we get that tapering effect of widening the middle of the body. Possibly even overstretching the muscles of the abdomen, making it more difficult to create that girdle of support for our core and low back. And again, when that belly comes forward, it's pulling, the abdominal muscles are pulling on that pelvic floor, contracting and tightening. We need those nerve pathways to be open at the base of the spine so that our body has full connection and the ability to ground our nervous system. If you ask Google, the answer will be the intermediary breath, breathing into the belly to vacuum, breath into the lungs. But you have all you need to experiment a body and the ability to breathe in order to test the pelvic floor breathing versus the belly breathing and see which one really gives you more space and vacuum in order to allow our lungs to flood with oxygen.